Hi, I'm Kevin Juder, hanging out with Afshin Banab, Vincent Charles, and Chris Cherry, and welcome to this week's edition of the nation's capital sports show, where it is most definitely on. Newsflash, the big story. Maryland goes from the ACC to the Big Ten Conference, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this because I know that certain individuals on our team, their ire will be stared, and I'm going to muck up that rake goodness as we go along here. But before we get to that, we do know that it's a done deal, and you have to ask, how long has this deal been in progress? And the Terps' exit from the ACC ends over 60 years of rivalries. And so there's a lot to talk about in terms of that. But before we get to that, we got to ponder a good thought here. And it's from someone that we all know and love here. And so I'm going to read this. Quote, "The sadness about Maryland bolting the Big Ten is I won't care about them anymore. Granted, when I did care about them, it's because I wanted them to lose. And granted, that lose is in all caps. He wanted them to lose all the time. But now I won't even have an interest to follow them, even to watch them lose." And lose, of course, is in small caps with a period. Good punctuation there. End of quote. Chris Cherry. Wow.
You said that?
You said that, man?
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said that. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons. Going to spend a little bit of time on this because this is actually of epic proportions when you talk in terms of the University of Maryland going from one division to the next, and you have a lot of mixed emotions here. So first, we're going to start with Chris.
Well, I had heard a rumor about it last week, and then it just mushroomed. This got done exceedingly quickly because, you know, usually these things, you know, you kind of hear about them over time, but this was pretty much done in 72 hours, and it's really a surprise to me that it happened this fast and it happened the way it did.
It did happen fast. I don't agree that it happened just now, though. I think this has been in the makings for maybe 3 or 4 years. When the Big Ten signed Nebraska on into that conference, they were talking about other ACC schools at that time, including Georgia Tech and North Carolina. The Big Ten commissioner is a North Carolina alum, played for Dean Smith. The regents, however, were not all there to vote on it. So that's why it was so fast. Tom McMillan even said that 4 regents weren't there to be able to vote on this issue, that they should have given it more time, and I do agree with that.
And that's right. And Tom actually, you know, wanted the athletes to weigh in, the coaches to weigh in of the ACC. He thought that this is perhaps they were kind of bamboozled in regards to this. Vincent?
I think it's been in their minds for the last couple of years, but like you say, recently speeded up, and I think part of that is because the football program is not improving as far as the financial situation is. And they're seeing that they need the money, and they need it now. And
in the words of Cuba Gooding's Jr. character in that good sports movie, Jerry Maguire, as Cuba Gooding characters emphatically said, "Show me the money."
Show me the money.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to also say something that Vincent just touched on, because I think this might have also set in place when the ACC expanded to include Syracuse and Pittsburgh, because one of the big things that happened there, and I at the time I remember thinking Maryland might jump because of this, is the ACC decided on the basketball rotation that instead of Duke being Maryland's rival every year where they played twice a year, Virginia being the other, they had Maryland play Pittsburgh and Virginia. And I know that didn't make Maryland happy because you took their main rival, and it meant that you might play now every 3 years. You'd play Duke once home, once on the road, and on that third year you played them twice. So I thought Maryland was going to be unhappy. And, you know, let's face it, while I don't like the move, at the end of the day, the kind of money that's being talked about, if it's true that Maryland could generate as much as $100 million over the next 5 years from this deal, it's hard to tell them not to take that.
The wildly popular Big Ten network, too, which is on basic cable in a lot of systems, also was a big reason that Maryland made this jump, too. They will get recognition on TV. They will get that publicity. They will get a lot of face time for when this deal begins in 2014.
Coincidentally, Afshin, as you mentioned that, the Big Ten Conference paid out to its teams of Nebraska and Wisconsin, Ohio, and Penn State a total of $282 million. Split among those teams comes to $23 million and some change. Amazing. But wait, there's more. The ACC recently upped their broadcast deal with ESPN. Each team in the ACC will get $15 million. You do the math. $15 million $23.2 million. But wait, there's even more, gentlemen. In 2017, the Big Ten Conference, they're going to re-up their broadcast deal, and potentially that could mean more money.
Lots more money for the Big Ten, definitely, Kevin. But I think as far as Maryland football is concerned, I think they'll do decent in basketball. But the first couple of years, I think it's going to be a disaster for the football program.
But who cares about that, Vincent? I'm going to be the voice of devil's advocate. It's not about that, man. Forget about rivalries, man. It's a new age now. We're going to go to whoever I can get the most money from. You're talking too sensible here, man. You're being too sensible, my brother. But, Chris, it's about the money, man.
It's about the money. And I think when we thought that maybe this conference realignment had slowed down, I think now, it's a seismic shift, because I think now you're going to hear Florida State arguing once again, maybe even another ACC charter member, Clemson, thinking about leaving, because that's a lot of money to be put down. The key for the ACC right now is to make sure that Maryland pays that $50 million exit fee.
Well, some would have considered $50 million in excess in terms of it's not legal bonding, but nonetheless, we're not lawyers. We're not going to dispute or confirm that, but that's a lot of money to pay, Afshin.
Absolutely. Wallace Lowe, the president of the University of Maryland and an Iowa alum, another Big Ten school, by the way, he feels like that could be stood up in court. He could contest that in court. Furthermore, I believe the Big Ten will probably try to help pay that expense if it got down to a back and forth between Maryland and the ACC.
Okay, let me be clear on this. Here, Maryland just discontinues 7 sports because they can't afford it. Where are they coming up with $50 million?
I would say you could probably look at their sugar daddy, Kevin Plank, the owner of Under Armour, who supposedly cashed in $65 million in stock. And now all of a sudden, hey, $50 million to pay out, $65 million in stock? Just a coincidence, right?
Yeah, I agree.
That's right. And when you look at this is a big move and better for the Big Ten, because now they get their hooks into the coveted Washington, D.C. market.
Well, let's not forget, Rutgers is soon to follow,
You
too.
stole my thunder. I was going to mention that. Great minds think alike. Boom.
So that means they got the New York market. And I also think Notre Dame had a bit of a there was something with Notre Dame in this. Chris, I don't know how you feel about this, but when Notre Dame entered the ACC, they took everything from the Fighting Irish except football.
Right. I felt at the time the ACC shouldn't have accepted a partial membership. But I want to go back to something Kevin says, because as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend, there's this assumption that the Big Ten is making that the New York market and the Washington market will be theirs because of Maryland and Rutgers going to the Big Ten. Well, first of all, Rutgers is a state university of New Jersey, and they're not necessarily highly thought of in the New York City metro area. The New York City metro area's favorite football team is Notre Dame, followed by Syracuse. Rutgers is a distant third. And quite frankly, with 30,000 seats filled at Byrd Stadium for football games, it's arguable that the most popular college football team in the Washington metro area, which hurts me to say a little bit, is not the University of Maryland, it is Virginia Tech. They get much higher ratings on TV, much higher ratings on radio. So we'll see if what the Big Ten expects, these extra TV markets will come in.
Let's talk in terms of the geography, the teams in which Maryland now has to travel to Nebraska, then Wisconsin, then the closest team is probably Ohio, then even Penn State. This actually changes a lot in terms of the players, in terms of the geography in which they have to travel.
Well, definitely they're going to be traveling to places that they've never traveled before. What it does, though, Maryland and possibly Rutgers, is give you that contiguous Big Ten conference, because they're both attached or connected to Pennsylvania, where Penn State is located.
And the point I was trying to make is when they're in the ACC, there's no really cross-country travel. That was the distinguishing point that I was trying to make. Now you have where they're going to be traveling to places, as you mentioned before, that they haven't traveled or played before. Let's talk in terms of the competition. How do you expect Maryland to, contend in the Big Ten Conference? First, we'll start with Vincent.
Okay, like I began to say, I think
And you continue to say.
I think
did I read his mind?
And Rutgers are going to be the doormats for the first couple of years. Whether Maryland can catch up, that is to be determined by how they recruit. they are really going to have to go out, get the skilled players, get these linemen that the Big Ten has been recruiting over the years. You see the big lines, Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State. I'll tell you what, they're going to get the money, and the people are going to come to the stadium for the first couple of years. But to see teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State. But if they're not winning, they're not going to continue to come.
Well, the unfortunate thing about it, I disagree with that. I kind of agree with shift over here with my friend Chris. I think they will be coming, but it won't be for Maryland. but the bottom line is it brings a lot of revenue in terms of the University of Maryland, or I should say potential revenue. And we got an email. Someone emailed Chris today, one of our listeners from Stitcher.com, and they posed Chris the following question. Chris is actually going to read his own email. See how cruel I am? I'm making the guys read their own emails, and then you can answer it too.
And this is why I have my glasses on. But it says, say it isn't so. This is a smack in the face to many former and present students. This breaks tradition and even more upsetting the powers that be at Maryland, who probably had this deal in the works for a while. How else can you explain the rapid rate of approval that this got done? And this is from June Bainbridge of the University of Maryland. She's an alum, class of '98, lives in Baltimore, Maryland. I think June is correct, and as we said before, something like this doesn't just happen in 72 hours. There had to be a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiating about it, and it makes you wonder how far it went back. In a way, I make the analogy, it's kind of like the mob wars. Everybody's like scheming against everybody else, because it was just 2 months ago that the University of Maryland was on board with saying, yeah, we approved Notre Dame to come into the league as a partial member, and we're committed to the ACC. And 2 months later, boom, they jumped to the Big Ten.
And Maryland also was one of two schools, the other one being Florida State, that rejected the $50 million exit fee, which would enable Maryland to now leave to go to the Big Ten.
But remember, guys, the clock is ticking. This repositioning in college football is happening so fast, Maryland realized that they had to act.
Tick, 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 tock, tock, tock. I don't think the clock is ticking, because this is the way in which college football across the land is doing business nowadays. As the funds deplete or come to a diminishing point, and former conferences that teams, or current conferences that teams are in, they are now looking for the biggest and badder, B-A-D-D-E-R, sugar daddy. And Afshin, you have email from one of our other listeners as well.
I do too. As a longtime season ticket holder of Maryland football, I am completely upset that Maryland would make such a move. Clearly, the Terps' ugly dissension into the Big Ten is a financial move. Who's to blame for this fiasco? Couldn't there be anything that ACC Commissioner John Swofford have done to stop this? Keep up the good work. I enjoy listening to your show. That is from Brady Tent in College Park, Maryland.
I'm going to let you answer this, but also going to let Chris sway into it regards, because you shared a thought with me early on through our course of emails back and forth today, and I want your input on this too, as well as Vincent. We'll start with you. It's your question.
No, he's absolutely right, but it goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. I think this has been in the makings for at least 3 or 4 years, back to when they decided that they wanted Nebraska in the Big Ten. They were talking about other ACC schools at the time, and maybe it even goes back further than that. So this is something that they've all wanted to do. I don't think this is something that happened overnight. I think that this was planned, and job well done for them if they got what they wanted.
And you have student athletes coming out of former alumni of Maryland saying, hey, where's the tradition? Now, when I look at Maryland, there's nothing for me to compare it with, because now I just look at what Maryland used to be in terms of playing there. And now it's a new regime and a new element. Chris, I'm sorry, I'll let you answer the question.
Well, I would just say, to something that Brady said in that email, I think there is somebody you can point at to all of this, and that is John Swofford, because as much as us ACC fans might be a little disappointed today about Maryland's move, can't forget the fact of the matter is the ACC under John Swofford started all this in 2003, when without any kind of notification, they went and tried to steal Boston College, Syracuse, and Miami from the Big East to come to the ACC without letting the commissioner of the Big East know that. And so they were successful in getting 2 of those 3. Syracuse is in now, but they ended up taking Virginia Tech back in 2004. But at the end of the day, I don't know what Swofford could do. Once you start dealing like that, and that's why I say that kind of like mob boss mentality, once you make a hit on the Big East like they did, you're subject to be having someone come after you, and that's what's happened today. And again, we talked about Maryland, but look out for Florida State to potentially leave too.
And maybe Clemson even after that. And at the end of the day, it is all about the money, and that's what this was.
That's a good point that you make there, Chris. There are going to be other teams probably leaving the ACC, but then once again, there are going to be teams jumping into the ACC too to further continue this repositioning of college football. I am going to miss the rivalries, but there'll be new rivalries established in both football and basketball.
Well, let me ask you, what teams would join the ACC? And this is a round-robin question. First, we'll start with you.
Okay. Teams that come to mind, maybe Marshall, maybe Richmond, East Carolina.
Well, I would say forget about Marshall. Right. If they didn't want West Virginia, they definitely don't want Marshall.
Connecticut,
and Richmond. Richmond has such a nice 8,000-seat football stadium. They would fit right in with the ACC. No, I think the school that's on everybody's lips, the school that's been begging to get in the ACC, and they want to get in, and they have a sugar daddy called ESPN. That's the University of Connecticut up in Storrs, and they play their games in East Hartford, Connecticut. So that would be, they have obviously a built-in basketball program, the football program.
They're Big East now, right?
Yeah, they're Big East now, but you could see UConn coming in. You might want to take a look at East Carolina. I mean, they have a good program. Somebody said Louisville, but you know, one thing that the ACC has been a little bit highbrow on over the years is their academics. So they don't particularly want schools that are not highly rated academic. UConn is considered, I think they're 67, 68, somewhere in the top 70 of universities, but when you start getting to schools like Louisville, you start getting into like that 130, 140 range.
And let me end it on this final question. Good or bad deal for the University of Maryland? You go first, then of course Afshin and then Vincent, and that's how we're going to end it.
I'd have to say that financially, I guess it's a good deal if they get all the money that's been promised to them by the Big Ten Network. If they don't, then it's a bad deal because they'll end up having longer trips but not as much money to pay for it.
I think it is going to be a good deal financially. I think the Bird Stadium now actually might sell out when you have Michigan and Ohio State fans coming to College Park. But I also think that this is not the end of it and that we could end up seeing 4 super conferences down the road somewhere.
I agree with the 4 super conferences. I think financially, great move for Maryland. But as far as the teams, I think football, it's going to be a disaster at first, but basketball will compete.
And gentlemen, out of all of our emails that we received 350 emails on our Stitcher.com, where you can check out the Nation's Capital Sports Show on the award-winning Stitcher Network at Stitcher.com. 200 some odd emails. I scanned through probably about 150. Almost all of them, University of Maryland folks. They were completely discombobulated, didn't agree with it, but at the end of the day, they did include that line in there saying, well, it's all about the money, and if this can save the University of Maryland to take back their sporting programs that they lost, such as track or tennis, well, none could be the wiser, although they were completely besides themselves. So, on behalf of Chris Jerry, Vincent Charles, and of course, Afshin Banab, I'm Kevin Jeter. We're going to return after this, and we're going to talk about high school football. And there's a little dissension among the ranks in the DCI AA, Afshin, and we're going to get into that after we return. We'll be right back. Hey, I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Afshin Banab, Vincent Charles, Chris Cherry, and welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where you can watch us on Fios 69, of course, Fios 38, and of course, Comcast 69. There you go. So now let's get talking about what we enjoy talking about the best, and that is local high school sports. We got something coming up in the DCI AA, Afshin, with one of our alma maters. Well, one alma mater, I should say. Wow, some bad news there, man.
I'm glad it's just one alma mater.
That's right.
Because we would be ineligible too.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I said that, man.
That's right. It's the 43rd annual Turkey Bowl Championship, and it was to feature the Wilson Tigers and the Dunbar Crimson Tide, but Wilson had an ineligible player, so they're out. Anacostia, who lost to Wilson in the semis, is now in, and they'll play Dunbar for the championship on Turkey Bowl Day.
It's just a sad story year after year after year with the DCI AA, because every year there's always ineligible players and they get set down. And the sad thing about it it's not just that the players are ineligible. For those, who don't know, one of the problems with D.C. being close to Maryland, there's always a lot of kids that live in Maryland that go to D.C. public schools. For all the talk about how bad D.C. public schools are, there's a lot of kids that come in, and they come in to play sports. The sad part about this whole thing, though, is that you have schools and parents and coaches and what have you who play the little kind of like trump card game, which is, I know that guy on that team is ineligible, we're going to play them, and if we win the game, fine, but if we lose, we're going to go report that guy as an ineligible player. In this case, with the Wilson player, this was discovered in October that he was ineligible, and yet they allowed him to continue to play. Now, DCIAA didn't know, but the fact is somebody on the other teams knew he was ineligible, and they waited until Wilson won their playoff game to go to the city championship Turkey Bowl. And then they decided to come clean and say, hey, you need to suspend this guy.
All right, so let's move this along, and let's talk in terms of the high school teams, Afshin.
All right.
And you and Chris can exchange that and Vincent.
Bow down to the Kings once again. The WCAC champions are the Good Counsel Falcons. They defeated DeMatha 26-14 at Navy Stadium. They've won 4 championships in a row, coming off of DeMatha's winning 14 out of 15 championships in the WCAC. So we've got new leaders on the mountaintop.
They're certainly the Kings right now. Good Counsel. What a program Bob Malloy has put together up at that school. They got a nice stadium out there in Olney, and they're on top.
Yeah, they are, and I like to see a little more diversity in WCAC in that it seems like every year it's DeMatha and going against Good Counsel now. I'd like to see some more teams get in there, but congratulations to the Falcons for winning.
Yeah, it would be nice to see a little bit more diversity right there. Maryland 4A states. Number 1 Wise will play number 4 Meade in one semifinal. Number 2 Westminster will face a tough number 3 Quince Orchard team in the other semis.
Yeah, Quince Orchard. I think they're going to end up going to M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore to play in the state championship. They're a very good team.
I agree. Now, Northern Virginia, let's cross the river. Division 6, 3A. Number 1 Westfield, no surprise there. They're going to face off in the regional finals against a surprise number 7 Oakton team who defeated the number 2 seed and number 3 seed Lake Braddock and Centerville respectively.
It's a bit of surprise, but then if you think about it, not really, because the 4 teams in the 6A were all from the same division.
Right.
And so what happens is Oakton is a number 7 seed because, quite frankly, they had to play other teams and got beat, but they still made the playoffs. I think it's going to be a good game. I look for Westfield to probably win that.
I think they will. Certainly Oakton riding high, though, so maybe they'll go in with a lot of emotion when they play Westfield. Now, closer to home here in Virginia, Division 5, no surprises as the number 1 seed Stonebridge, 12-0. They meet Arlington County's Yorktown Patriots, 12-0. Comments?
Yorktown!
Yeah, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, and this will probably be the first game for both teams where they're tested. Neither team has really been tested.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I would say just that I would have a little concern if I'm Yorktown is while neither team has been tested, Yorktown has really not been tested with the teams they've played.
Right.
And Stonebridge has a track record of getting down to the state finals. Not necessarily winning the state championship, but at least getting to the final.
Yeah, this is a big game for Yorktown, one of their biggest in their history, and they come off of that game against South County where they exacted revenge. M.J. Stewart, Arturo Brown had combined well over 300 yards rushing for those guys.
And the good thing about Yorktown, as you guys just stated, hopefully this will be a good contest because I had an opportunity to do a game with the Afshin in which we saw Yorktown in its present state always running over folks. And, you know, you want to see a good competition. You want to, you don't want to see folks get slammed all the time. So, according to you guys, this will be the game. So what else is going on there, my man?
Well, those are the biggest in the area. There were a couple others we could have talked about in Maryland, but they were a little further out, like in the Maryland 3As and 2As. But those are the closest ones in the area. Those are the biggest high school games thus far in the playoffs.
Thank you very much. And if you want to email us, tncsportsshow@gmail.com. You guys neglected to give that email during the last break. Don't think I didn't notice that. All right, let's talk about the Washington Redskins, 31-6 over the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, let's move on. No.
Hail to the Redskins.
Quite a good game.
It was. It was a good game, but let's remember the Philadelphia Eagles are in a downward spiral. I mean, they have no offensive line. They started a rookie quarterback. They made him throw. Andy Reid made him throw 50 times. I don't know why, beyond belief, when you have a great running back like LaShawn McCoy. and they have no DBs. They're actually worse on a lot of positions than the Washington Redskins.
And when you look at the NFC East, it's up for grabs because right now the Washington Redskins at 4-6 are one game behind the Dallas Cowboys, in which they play on Thanksgiving Day, and of course they're 2 games back from the New York Giants.
Well, I think there's absolutely no question the Redskins are going to go to the Super Bowl based on the fact that they won that game against Philadelphia. But in all seriousness, you
have hot flashes over there, man?
I do think that the Redskins do have a shot. I mean, if they can go down to Dallas and win, the Thanksgiving Day game, I think, they got a shot to maybe be 8-8 and maybe make the playoffs.
All right, let's size up the competition for the Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Redskins. In Dallas, deep in the heart of Texas. So let's talk about the defense and offense and special teams. And first, we'll start with you, Afshin.
Yeah, well, the offense, as long as Robert Griffin III is playing, the Redskins have a shot. That's how I look at it. And also, Alfred Morris, you have to feed him more. And I don't know why Shanahan doesn't do it, but he needs to get the ball 25 times a game.
Vincent.
I think definitely the running game and ball control is going to be important, keeping Dallas off the field. But remember, Philadelphia is like a mash unit. Now the Redskins can take that game, learn from it, but they're going to have their hands full with Dallas because, as we know, every year these games can go either way. They need to be able to stop Tony Romo, that offense, Jason Witten, Des Bryant, running back Felix Jones. They got to put the pressure on Romo. They had 4 sacks this past game, so if they keep the pressure on defensively, they definitely got a chance against Dallas.
Realistically, Chris, you're talking about a depleted team, and I'll let you get your thought there, but realistically, you're talking about a depleted Washington Redskins team for all intents and purposes. So can the job be done against Dallas? And, of course, you can answer the question then.
Sure, I think it can be done because, not trying to be sarcastic, but the Redskins do play up or down to their level of competition. I mean, Dallas's last game against Cleveland, you think, how in the world would they let Cleveland stay around? And I think the Redskins, with this nice win over Philadelphia, even though it was a depleted Philadelphia team that didn't play well, the defense has confidence. They only gave up 6 points. They got 4 touchdown passes, so they could go into that game feeling. And it's nothing, football's a one game if you've just got confidence that you can do it.
Yeah.
And the Redskins now see wow, if we can win this game, we can go to 5-6, we'll be 2-1 in the division, and they actually can dream that they could possibly win the East. Sure.
Wow.
Well,
That's what Chris said, dream.
He did about the Redskins. Well, they could dream. Let's remember, too, one of the things that really got them psyched up for the Philadelphia game was safety Brandon Merriweather, who came back. He missed all the season. He played in the second preseason game, missed the first 9 games, comes back against Philadelphia, plays the first half and does a really good job, gets a turnover, and then he tears his ACL and now he's out. So the Redskins are also depleted in the backfield.
Talk about a string of bad luck. And let's talk about Chris Cooley, non-factor.
Again, he's a non-factor, and Griffin III loves the big, goofy tight end Logan Paulson. I say that as a term of endearment. Logan Paulson is about 6'5", 270, 280, and he is everywhere around the ball. You saw him catch a touchdown pass where he had to literally stretch his whole body into the end zone and get it.
That was an incredible catch. He just kind of got that from nowhere.
Yeah.
And you got to respect him. He's doing the job, so, Cooley is second fiddle right now.
That's right. And the fumble recovery, man, that was pretty cool.
The one by Ryan Kerrigan?
Yes, it was.
Well, like they always say, you never know what happens under a big mound of people like that in a football game.
It was like watching rugby, man. He got the ball from the bottom of the scrum.
That was amazing, the way he took that ball out, because the referees don't see it. They don't know what's going on until he comes up with it and he shows the refs he's got the ball.
All right, let's talk about our predictions for the Washington Redskins versus the Dallas Cowboys. And first, we're going to start with Chris.
I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to score 24 points. I think the Redskins are going to score 27. I am picking the Redskins to beat Dallas, upset them on Turkey Day.
Oh, wow.
I completely agree with you. I'm going to jump on your bandwagon. The Redskins are going to the Super Bowl. I think that the Redskins will win. I'll make it 28-17.
Is something in that water, though, man? You drinking that?
This is water.
Is the hot lights under it, man?
No, the Redskins 28-17.
Well, Dallas is just as hungry as the Redskins, and they got a lot of stars, too. The Redskins
Other than the ones on their helmet, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
The Redskins are somewhat depleted, but playing at home, I'm going to give this to the Cowboys, 30-24.
Wow. Oh, my friend. Wow. I'm going to be the agree with these guys.
Oh, okay.
You know, Redskins 28, Dallas 21.
Hey, what do you say? I mean, three of us picking the Redskins. Now, you know, I always go against the Redskins. And I'm picking them.
Something's
so,
wrong.
You know.
Yeah, I know.
But you know what happens when I go
see.
against them? I'm always right.
Right.
But one thing, this game is on the national stage, and truly RG3 could rise to the occasion.
Well, he's been rising to the occasion for almost all season. He's been pretty good. He has a QB rating of 158.3. Let's talk about DC United. DC United. Bump, 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 bump. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not advance to the playoffs. They lost against Houston Dynamo. And the aggregate, and Chris, you're going to explain that to us.
Yeah, what the aggregate is, in most of world soccer, when you have a playoff series, it's 2 games, and it's total goals between the 2 games. The first game, Houston won 3-1 at Houston, so DC United really had a mountain to climb. They had to win by at least two goals in the regulation just to get extra time, and they were unable to do it with a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, they played well, though. It was a good season for DC United, going with all the injuries, when you think about that. And then Ben Olsen having to shuffle his lineup literally game by game. I really like the job he did with DC, the black and red.
They're a young team. They're building, and this was a great year for them to get back into it. And I think that they got a lot to build on, and I expect a lot more in the coming years.
I agree, Vincent. And the good thing about this is, in which we talked about from our podcast and right here on AIM, or AIM, I should say, or AIM, is that basically DC United and Ben Olsen, he didn't care whether or not you were a starter. If you didn't give him the production that he needed, he switched up on you. And that's one of the things that so many coaches would do in different sports, but he does it, and he played well to it.
It worked. I would just say that I think, before I say as a young team, I would say that they bought themselves an extra year because, you know, let's see if they continue this success next year, because if they don't, you know, we may be talking, you know, as I always, ready to fire coaches and general managers. We could do that. But it was a good season for DC United, and glad to see the stadium filled, the lower bowl filled for that playoff game.
Right. So let's close this out. If you had to give DC United and Coach Ben Olsen a grade from A to F, what would it be? First, we'll start with you, Chris.
I'd give them a B. I think it was a good season for them. I'd give them a B, yeah.
Vincent.
I would give them a B. We got to consider the injuries, but I do like the point that Kevin brought up about how Ben Olsen adapted in all the different situations that he was faced with. I'd give them a B.
Afshin.
Solid B. He performed well as a coach, and he got his players to perform equally well on the field, especially without a Dwayne De Rosario.
That's right. He made do with what he had. Wow. It's like making the water out of lemonade, so to speak. And I will give him a B as well. Good season for DC United. Bump, 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 bump. Folks don't have to hear me sing that any longer. So before we get out of here, let's we make room and get out of here and prepare for the Thanksgiving holiday. It's nice for us to go around the table and give our Thanksgiving blessings or givings or words that we normally do on our podcast here, the Nation's Capital Sports Show. So first, we'll start with you, Vincent.
I'd like to wish all our viewers and our listeners on our podcast a happy Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for, and here on the Nation's Capital Sports Show, we have a lot to be thankful for that AIM has given us this opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, Vincent, with you. I'm thankful to have you three as good friends, not just on the show, but off the show as well. And I'm thankful that we have peace here in the United States, unfortunately not for the rest of the world. And I wish everyone out there a happy Thanksgiving and peace on earth.
Chris.
I couldn't add much more to what you guys said. I'd like to, you know, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and say that peace to everyone, and especially peace to my 3 good buddies here on the set with me.
All right, same too. 3 amigos, good friends. And as you break bread with your family and friends on this very historic Thanksgiving Day, remember those who are less fortunate. Remember those that are fortunate. So on your travels to and from wherever you go, wherever you may be, take the blessings and the spirit with you in your safe journeys and travels. And Afshin, we have our very own NCSS AIM team or AIM team to thank here, and you're going to do the honors for us.
Obviously, and happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of them. Devin Gallagher, Charles Smith, Sally Gelastino, Ken Briley, Steve Cordell, Vincent Brown, Craig Syfax, Jane R. Stewart, and Jonathan Kim. Thank you to all of them for being a great crew.
I really do. Good.
Yeah, we
applaud it. Yeah, that's right.
Golf club.
That's right. So, on behalf of my esteemed friends and Chris Jerry, Afshin Banab, and of course, Vincent Charles, I'm Kevin Jeter. We thank you for listening to the Nation's Capital Sports Show on Stitcher.com, iTunes. We're all over the place. And of course, right here on Arlington Independent Media, where you can listen to us or actually view us on Comcast 69 and Files 38. Have a great weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving. God bless. Take care.